friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. In case you're new here, my name's Jennifer. As you probably guessed from the title of this video, we're going to be doing something a little bit unconventional today. We are going to be planting grocery store potatoes. Now, I'm not going to tell you guys that this is the ideal way to do this because it's not. In fact, there are a lot of things about how we're going to do this today that are really not ideal, but I am going to do it anyway, and I'm going to tell you why. First, we're going to get into the reasons why planting potatoes that you've purchased from the grocery store may not be the ideal way to grow potatoes. So first of all, you don't really get to choose from a lot of varieties. Grocery stores might have maybe 3 or 4 types. You'll have your russet potatoes, you'll have your gold potatoes, your red potatoes. Maybe if you're lucky, you can find a bag of the little new potatoes, maybe have some purple ones in there. But you're not going to really have a lot of options the way you would if you were purchasing from a seed company. Kind of going along with that, when you purchase from a grocery store, you don't know the varieties that you're growing. Now, you know it's a red potato, a gold potato, whatever type of potato, but you don't know the specific variety. I mean, I don't even know how many kinds of, say, like red potatoes there are out there. There are many. And when you don't know the specific variety, there's a lot that you don't know. For example, you don't know the days to maturity. You don't know how long it's going to be from when you plant that potato to when you can harvest a crop. So, you kind of have to be able to be prepared to go with the flow a little bit. You don't really exactly know what you're going to get. Another disadvantage to growing potatoes from the grocery store, which is the big one that you're probably going to hear about, this is what all the seed companies are going to tell you. This is why all the seed companies are going to tell you that you should grow their potatoes instead of potatoes from the grocery store, is that seed companies test their potatoes for viruses and diseases before they send them out to you. So when you purchase seed potatoes from, say, a garden store, from a seed company online, you know that you are getting disease-free and virus-free potatoes. Now, from the grocery store, you don't know, because these potato diseases, they're not going to be harmful to you. If you eat a potato that was from a plant that was infected with early blight or whatever, it's not going to harm you, but growing that potato would not lead to a healthy plant growing. So you don't know for sure. It's a little bit more of a gamble getting a potato from the grocery store to grow. There's a couple other reasons that what we're going to do today is not ideal. If you're watching this video as it airs, you may notice that I'm planting these potatoes at the end of June. That is kind of not the ideal season to plant potatoes. In my area, you can plant potatoes usually mid to late April, depending on the weather. So I'm about 2 months late. Now that should still be plenty of time for me to get a harvest. Most people end up harvesting their potatoes around midsummer. I'm not going to be able to harvest mine until fall, but that is okay. Now, I don't know exactly. I am taking a bit of a risk because, as I said, these are grocery store potatoes. I don't know what kind they are. Therefore, I don't know the days to maturity. So if I have inadvertently chosen a potato with a really long days to maturity, it's possible that I might not be able to get a full harvest, but that's a risk that I'm willing to take. One other thing that is really not ideal about what we're doing today is the way I'm going to grow these potatoes. Now, I'm sure you've seen lots of people grow potatoes in pots, and that can definitely be done. You can be very successful. I have personally not had a lot of success growing potatoes in pots. They tend to yield a lot more for me when they're grown in the ground, except for the fact that I have voles all over my area. And whenever I grow potatoes in the ground, the majority of them have little bites taken out of them, which, I mean, if you're going to make your potato right then, you just cut the bite part off, the rest of the potato's fine. But a potato with a bite in it is not going to really store that well. So I found that the best way for me to get potatoes is to grow them in pots. Now, the harvest is not going to be as big, but the potatoes are a lot less likely to be damaged. So let's talk about the pots I'm going to be growing these in. I have a couple pots like this. I mean, this is a pretty good size, decent pot, but I have a few that are a little less than ideal as well. This is a repurposed nursery pot from a plant. I think my mom gave this to me actually, from a plant that she grew. So this one's not as big. It's probably not really ideal for growing potatoes, but we're going to try it anyway. We're going to see what happens. Now, this is an old chicken feed bag. So my chickens ate all the food from here, and I saw this bag and I was like, you know what? They make grow bags for potatoes and plants. I have a bag here. It's basically made out of the same kind of material. We're going to give this a try. That was free. It cost me nothing. So why not see what happens? Now, if you've been around here a while, you know that I am limited on space and I love to grow things, and the amount of things that I would love to grow would not fit on my property. And so I'm always looking for more places to grow things. So whenever I see an empty container like that, I'm like, oh, I could grow a plant in that. I could grow food in that. Now, I also have a 5-gallon bucket. I'm going to, when my husband gets home with his drill, he's going to drill a couple holes in the bottom of this for me. I'm not going to actually plant this one right now in this video, but I just wanted to show you the bucket. This is just a Home Depot bucket, not ideal, but I'm going to drill a couple holes in the bottom of this bucket. We're going to plant a couple potatoes in here too. So now I've outlined all the ways that what we're doing today is not the ideal way to grow potatoes. Let's talk about why I decided to do it anyway. The first reason is that when I first started planning my garden for this year, I had decided not to grow potatoes this year, so I didn't order any seed potatoes. I didn't actually even decide to grow potatoes until a couple weeks ago. Kind of what led me to... Chickens are up to something out there. I don't know if you heard that, but something's going on in the backyard with the chickens. All right, so I'm back. I had to go see what was going on with the chickens. Apparently one of the chickens found something delicious and her sister had to let everyone know so they could all try to take it from her. Anyway, chicken drama. So we were talking about the reasons why I decided to do this anyway, despite the fact that it's not ideal. Now, because I had originally decided not to grow potatoes this year, I didn't order seed potatoes in time. Once I decided that I really did want to grow potatoes, I went to my local feed store, I went to my local home improvement store, I went to my local nursery. Nobody had potatoes anymore. It was just too late because everybody else in my area planted their potatoes at least a month, maybe even 2 months ago. So I'm definitely behind the curve there. So everyone was either sold out or they figured no one was crazy enough to start potatoes in June and took them off the shelf. So because of that, my option was either to take a stab at growing grocery store potatoes or to not grow potatoes. Now I want to tell you guys why I decided to grow potatoes this year. Basically, it's not really a surprise to anyone to hear that the world is kind of crazy right now. There's a lot going on with inflation and supply issues are really just kind of up in the air. Nobody really knows what's going to happen the next few months. And I'm really hoping that everything will get back to normal really quickly and none of this will be an issue. But just in case, I want to be prepared. So I decided that what I need to focus on is growing more produce that is going to store through the winter months. Now here in Connecticut, we have a pretty long winter. There's probably more than half the year that I can't really grow food during. And so I want to make sure that we're able to have produce that's going to store a long time for us over the winter. So I've transitioned more into growing more butternut squash, more pumpkins, more sweet potatoes. I always grow garlic, things like that that are really going to store well. And so I decided I really should be growing potatoes as well. So that is why I decided to grow potatoes. And I decided to go ahead and do grocery store potatoes because if I don't give this a try, I'm not going to have potatoes. If I give this a try, I might get potatoes. I probably will not get as big of a harvest as I would if I did this the ideal way. I mean, I'm pretty much guaranteed to not get as big of a harvest as I would if I did this the ideal way. But I have a lot more chance of getting a harvest doing it this way than I would if I did nothing. Giving yourself a chance to grow food, whether or not you're successful, is better than not growing anything, is better than not trying. And so I'm going to try this. I'm going to see what happens. And maybe we'll have success. Now, so let's talk about the potatoes. I have 2 types of potatoes here. I have some gold potatoes. You can see I've cut these up. They don't look all that beautiful right now. And I've got some red potatoes. So basically, I went to the grocery store. I got a 5-pound bag of each variety. As I said, I don't know specifically what variety they are, but I got a bag of gold potatoes and a bag of red potatoes. Now, when you're growing potatoes, what you're going to want to do, unless your potatoes are really small, you're going to want to cut them up because you're going to get 1 plant from each potato section, and that allows your potato harvest to really stretch far. So what you're going to want to do, you're going to want to make sure that each section that you grow, see these little eyes in here? I'm sure we've probably all had the experience where you have potatoes left in your pantry or in your cabinet for a little too long and then they start to grow these weird, crazy shoots out of them called potato eyes. So what you want to do, these haven't really started growing yet, but you want to look and make sure when you cut this potato into sections, each section needs to have at least 1 eye. 2 eyes per section or more is ideal because those eyes are where the potato is going to send its shoots, its stems, and ultimately its leaves out of. So if your potato doesn't have any of those, it's not going to be able to grow very well. So just make sure that each section of the potato that you cut up has at least 1 eye, preferably 2 or more. This one looks like it has about 4. It's got 3 right in a row here, and then another one up here. Now, once you cut your potato into sections, you can see this has started to kind of dry out and scab over. Once you do that, you want to let your potatoes sit just on the countertop for about 48 hours or so. That's going to allow this part to kind of heal up, and that's going to prevent disease from getting into your potato. It's going to prevent your potato from rotting well, I shouldn't say it's going to prevent, it's going to lessen the chance that your potato will rot once you get it in the ground. So to give yourself the best chance of success, go ahead and do that. Now, if your potatoes are really small and you're putting the whole potato in the dirt, you don't need to worry about cutting it up. You don't need to let it heal for 48 hours. That's just see, these potatoes were pretty big, and so it would not really be a very efficient use of resources to just put each potato in the ground whole. Now, I did weigh these potatoes so that we can see what kind of yield we get from them. I don't remember exactly how much they weighed. I'm going to pop a picture on the screen right here of these potatoes on the scale so you can see how much they weighed. At the end of the season, we're going to get our harvest, we're going to weigh our harvest, and we're going to see how well our potatoes produced for us. So you can see I've got this big pot here. This was a pot that I got at the home improvement store. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a shovelful or two of compost on the bottom of this, and then I'm going to mix it with some bagged potting soil. You can see I have some bagged potting soil here, which I'm going to mix with the compost. Now, in my list of ways that this is not ideal, I forgot to mention the bagged soil that I'm using. Now, I'm not a big fan of most potting mixes. I know you can get good ones, but in my experience in my area, they're a little bit harder to find. You mostly just have the same couple brands at the home improvement store, which I'm not a huge fan of. And so usually I make my own potting mix. We'll talk about that in a separate video. But for this video here, just know that I am out of it. I don't have enough for this. So I'm going to use that other mix. It is organic, but it's still not my favorite brand. But we're going to go ahead and use it. We're going to mix it with compost, and it's going to be better than if we didn't do anything. Okay, so you can see that I have my compost in the bottom of the bucket here. I'm going to go ahead and add some of this potting soil to it and mix it up really thoroughly. Now here is where knowing whether you have determinate or indeterminate potatoes really comes into play. As I mentioned, these are from the grocery store. I have no idea if they're determinate or indeterminate. The idea with indeterminate potatoes is that they'll keep growing taller and taller and taller the more you mound them up as the season goes on. I am assuming that the potatoes I have are probably determinate and probably won't do that because I think most potato varieties are determinate. But as I don't know for sure, we're going to be doing a little bit of an experiment here, as if this wasn't already an experiment enough. We're going to add a little more to it. So I have these two pots here. In one pot, I'm going to plant 4 of these red potato pieces. In the other pot, I'm going to plant 4 of the gold potato pieces. So I've probably got 6 or 7 inches in here. It's a mix of compost and potting soil. You probably don't really need to do that much below them, but I'm doing that partly because the base of the pot was so narrow. I want to make it wider so that I can really spread out my potatoes, so I had to make it taller in order to do that. So in this pot here, we're going to start with our red potatoes. So I'm just going to take these potatoes. I like to plant them with the eye kind of facing up. I don't know if that really matters or not, but I just always do that. I'm just going to spread them out pretty evenly. So I'm just going to cover these with a couple more inches. I'm going to put a little bit of potting soil on top and then maybe another shovelful or 2 of compost above them. And then what happens is as the potatoes grow, I'm going to mound up the top with straw until they reach the top of this bucket. As I said, that's an experiment. I'm not going out and telling you that this is the ultimate way to grow potatoes. It is not. But that is what we are going to do today. So one thing I forgot to mention about growing in this chicken feed bag, I'm not sure how good the drainage is in this. So I did poke a couple holes in the bottom. I don't know if you can see them there. And as an aside, let me know that I'm not the only crazy person who does this. I could have gone inside and gotten a pair of scissors and cut those holes in about 10 seconds, but I didn't feel like going inside, so instead I sat there for like 5 minutes hacking at them with my garden shears. I don't know. I guess I thought it would be faster. It was not. All right, so let's get this planted. This is wanting to tip over, so I'm gonna grab this bucket. So I'm gonna grab this planter to lean it against. So you don't want to bury your potatoes too deeply. We just put a couple inches of potting soil and compost over them. Basically, there is a limited amount of energy within the potato itself, and that is what is going to fuel the potato plant until it reaches the surface, until it sees the sun and is able to make more energy that way. So we want to make sure, it's kind of similar to planting a seed. You want to make sure that you don't give it too far to go so that it doesn't use up that energy before it reaches the surface and can replenish its energy. Now, as these potatoes grow, I'm probably not going to add more compost or soil to them, but I am going to kind of mulch them with straw as they grow. Basically, as potato plants grow, they make their tubers, the potatoes, along the lower part of the stem. And so you want to make sure that that is covered and protected from sunlight. So if those potato tubers are exposed to the sun, what can happen is that they turn green and they develop a toxic compound that can really upset your stomach. So you don't want to eat green potatoes. And what makes them green is exposure to sunlight. So as the potato plants grow, we're going to cover the lower part with straw just to make sure that that doesn't happen. So thank you guys for joining me on my potato experiment today. I know this is a little bit of an unconventional thing to do, but I hope that you will join me later in the season when we harvest our potatoes. We can see how they did. We'll see if this is actually successful or not. It could be a complete failure, but if we didn't do it, we'd have a 100% chance of failure. So we're going to give it a shot. We're going to see what happens, and hopefully we will have some delicious potatoes to enjoy over this winter. All right, guys, I hope you're having a good day. I hope that you are experimenting in your garden, learning something new. I encourage you guys to kind of break the rules sometimes, and we'll see what happens. Come join me in the fall when we harvest these potatoes, when we hopefully harvest these potatoes. We'll see what we get, and I will compare the weights of our harvest to the weight of our planted potatoes, and we will find out if it was worth it. All right, guys, I hope you're having a good day. Bye. See you next time.